Hello, Bruins. I'm Granger Metter. I'm in charge of the district's technology and communications, and I'm the lucky guy that gets to chair its pandemic response committee. I'm here to talk to you about our district's health protocols for its reopening. We have a detailed reopening plan for the district for in-person instruction, and currently we have about 80% of our students still enrolled in in-person instruction in Bartlesville. We, as a county, at the time of this video, are rated yellow in the state's alert system, meaning we're okayed for in-person instruction so long as we're following our health protocols. However, if you've been watching the news, you know that to our south in the Tulsa area, they are in orange level 1 in the alert system, and so a number of districts in the metro area have had to opt for a delayed start or go to virtual instruction. We know that in Washington County, that alert level could hit us, and we would need to transition to distance learning. We also know that even if we avoid that, we might have staffing issues that require distance learning, or it's a certainty that we'll have many students and staff who at some time during the year may need to self-quarantine to keep them safe, or some that might develop COVID-19 and need to isolate for a while. So these health protocols are all designed around having as much in-person instruction as possible while doing so safely. So please pay attention to the key highlights in this video. One of our best protections against COVID-19 is what some people call social distancing. I don't like that term. I think of it as physical distancing because it's all about how far apart people are. Now, you're probably heard about we need to be 6 feet or 2 meters apart. And when does that really apply? Because we know that in many classrooms, that's simply not going to be possible. Even with the reduced enrollments from some kids going virtual, it may not be possible to get 6 feet between every person in a room. Well, 6 feet is what we use for close contact tracing. So what you want to try and do in a real classroom is maximize it as far as you can. So if you can get 4 feet between every kid, great. If you can only get 3 feet, okay. But do the most you can with what you've got to work with, because the better you can isolate people from each other, the less the virus can spread. Physical distancing is particularly important to you as a staff member. You need to try and avoid self-quarantines because if you're a teacher, that can affect your entire class for up to 14 days. If you're another type of employee, that impact could be clear across the building. So how do you make sure that you're staying 6 feet away from folks? Well, one thing you hear people say is, well, extend your arm out, and then if the other person does the same, then if you're not touching, you're probably 6 feet apart. Well, I tried it on myself, and the distance from my mouth over to the tips of my fingers is about 2.5 feet. So if you doubled Granger, horror story, I know, and two of us were doing that kind of trick, we'd still only be about 5 feet apart. So we'd need to do that and then do a little bit extra to make sure we had 6 feet between us. But one strategy inside a school is to look up because most of our school buildings have ceiling grid tiles, and those ceiling grid tiles are 2 feet by 4 feet. So you can line yourself up with the edge. Maybe it's the long edge of one of those ceiling tiles. And then you can look and see that you need 3 ceiling tiles before you get to the next person. That'd be 6 feet. Or if you're lined up on the short edge of one of those ceiling tiles, then you need the next person to be more than halfway along the next ceiling tile from you to be 6 feet away. Of course, in your own work environment, you'd want to make sure that you arrange things if you can so that you're 6 feet away from people in most typical situations. 6 feet from, say, the teacher desk where you might often sit to the nearest student, or if you're in an office situation, try and make sure that you're 6 feet apart from other folks. In the classroom environment in the elementary school, it might be possible to have seating charts and try and make sure kids in a certain area, you know who was within 6 feet of a child who might be testing positive, but it seems unlikely to me in the elementary world because of just the nature of being in there much of the day, having activity centers, kids needing to move around and so on. So it may very well be in some elementary classrooms that you can't really identify precisely which kids were within 6 feet of someone else, and the whole classroom might have to quarantine. We are doing what we can with that. For instance, in our specials, limiting the length of a special. What about when you are in the secondary environment? Well, there things might be a little different. Because the classes are shorter, it's a little more practical to have assigned seating charts and maybe have kids stick to those. And if so, if you could try and arrange your classroom so that you know where kids are and who's within 6 feet of a given student, that could really help during a contact tracing because it could mean that we can figure out where's the kid of interest and who is in 6 feet of that and thus needs to self-quarantine. One thing to remember anytime you're handling self quarantines is FERPA. We all have to go through that annual training, right, about FERPA. And so, under the federal law, we must protect student privacy when we have quarantines. So, if you need to know about a student who's a positive case as part of contact tracing, then you'll be told so that you can assist with that process. But you cannot tell anyone outside of the school environment about a particular student any way that identifies them as being a positive case. That is simply not allowed under federal law. And our contact tracers at the sites and at the district are aware of the FERPA restrictions and can assist if you get pressure or something like that about trying to identify things and you're just not sure if you're allowed to release some information. But the default position should be we never release any identifying information about a student who's a positive case. Face coverings. There's a lot of needless controversy and a lot of nonsense on social media about face coverings. We are following the State Board of Education's adopted guidelines on face coverings for the safety of our students and our staff. And that means that we have a minimum requirement for all students grades 4 and up and for all adults on campus. And that is if you're within 6 feet of someone else, you need to wear a face covering. There is no excuse. There's some kind of face covering you can wear to help protect other people. And so, one thing we're doing to help make this easier for students and staff is providing a Bruin Gator to everyone. Now, just this last week, we had brand new research that showed that there's a type of gator that didn't provide very good protection, but we don't have data from that study about how many layers, what was the gator made out of, and so on. So, one thing I'll tell you about our Bruin Gators is they have a nylon exterior, they have a cotton liner. I feel a little bit better that they have that cotton liner, and I would and have urge you to have your students always wear a Bruin Gator, if you wear one, double. So it's 2 layers. And my advice on that is that I find it easier to adjust if you'll fold it so that the 2 layer edges are at the bottom of the gator when you put it on. And so I like to kind of wear it like this if I'm going to wear a Bruin Gator. And then I can just pull it up, make sure I'm going from the ridge of my nose down past my chin. And you can see that, yeah, I have my 2 layers there. And when you handle a Bruin Gator, you don't want to be touching this area a lot because that's where you're going to see some contamination from you or others. So you want to try and get in the habit of raising and lowering it from the sides and helping your students learn to do that. Now, if you're a teacher doing direct instruction, I don't think a Bruin Gator is particularly great because students really would benefit from seeing your mouth, being able to lip read for some students, and just seeing expressions and being more engaged with you. And so I would urge teachers doing direct instruction to wear a face shield. We don't have a lot of good data about how effective face shields are, but we do know that they offer excellent eye protection because of the coverage here and the foam along the top. And we know that they block droplets coming in and droplets going out from you. We just aren't sure about how much is coming around the sides. But this is what I would wear whenever I'm doing direct instruction with students in a group setting. Now, what about when I'm not, if I'm a teacher? Or if I'm a non-teacher, what would I wear? Well, you could wear the Bruin Gator, but I personally like things that have some data behind them. And so we have data from the recent study about cloth masks, and the district can provide staff members these FEMA cloth masks. And 2-layer cloth masks have a pretty good droplet reduction rate in what's going out. We don't have much data about coming in. That's very hard to test, but we have good data coming out. A simple bandana, something like that, might reduce droplets by 30 to 50%. A 2-layer cloth mask can reduce droplets by 70, even up to 85%. Now, that high-end level is reached by folks that invest in something called a filter. And if you do want to go buy a filter and insert it in a cloth mask of your choosing, or one that the district provides you, just look for a filter that has a non-woven, melt-blown polypropylene layer. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So non-woven, melt-blown polypropylene layer is what you want in a filter if you're going to use one in a cloth mask. Now, my preference is to go for the surgical mask. Surgical masks are cheap. The district can provide a few, but these aren't long lasting like these other masks. So I would just buy them in a box of 50. I can get them on Amazon for 20 to 50 cents a mask. And these suckers have a built-in melt-blown polypropylene layer. And in the tests with surgical masks, it was found that surgical masks reduced droplet emission by 99%. So you know they're giving good protection for others and probably giving you some pretty good protection as well. But how do you safely wear a surgical mask? one thing you want to do is try and handle it by the ear loops, okay? And so say you're putting your mask on, you put it on with your ear loops. You want to pull it down over your chin, and then you've got a nose wire here, so you can tighten this up and stop fogging your glasses and get a decent seal. And now you're ready to go. Now, one thing is, how do I take this thing off when I need to take a drink, or I need to do direct instruction with kids, or I need to eat? Well, one thing you want to avoid is trying to touch this area without taking precautions. So when you're removing your mask, use the ear loops to remove it. And then if I were you, I'd have a peg or a hook around to hang it on. So you can just hang it up. And it doesn't take much to get a hook. You know, a piece of tape and a bent paper clip can make a hook. And that way you can just hang it up and have it ready to remount. But if you do need to lay it down on something, one idea would be to take a paper towel. You can use, any paper towel from the school bathroom would do fine. And then just lay it down with the blue side down, because the blue side has the COVID infectious particles others might have been emitting on it, and just lay that down on that paper towel. And then you could enjoy your drink, have your meal. If you're eating, make absolutely sure that there is no one within 6 feet of you, because that's a high infection environment when everybody's unmasked and eating. Now, when you're going to put your mask back on, you want to follow hygiene. Because when you handled those ear loops, you might have been getting COVID on yourself. So you want to, go to the bathroom if you can, or have some hand sanitizer, because you can actually get it again. And do your 20 seconds with a hand sanitizer, because it's just like with soap and water. And my way of getting 20 seconds is I do a full mix, but then I just go through each finger to make sure I've got it covered. And that gives good coverage, and it also gives me time. And then I scrape my fingernails into my palms to try and get cleanser or soap or sanitizer under my nails. And by the time I do all that, I've got my 20 seconds in. And so the COVID that might have been on my hands is gone, is dead. Now, if I am going to put my mask back on, I would sanitize first. I would pick up my mask by the ear loops. I would put it on my face. And then I'm going to touch it. I'm going to try and avoid touching this much, but I am going to touch it to make sure I've got it here and I've got a good seal. And as soon as I've done that, I know that I've contaminated my hands. So back to 20 seconds, right, of hand sanitizer or soap or whatever I can use that's handy to me. I might be able to do this in the bathroom so that I can be safe. And that's the way you put a mask on and off safely. And you can reuse the mask for multiple days if you want to, as long as you're following those kind of careful protocols with it. But once it gets really moist, or if it gets soiled, you need to toss this thing and you need to go with a new disposable mask. And so the district does have some disposable masks, so you can try this out. And then, as I said, you can order your own and they're not that expensive. Okay, but what if you're a high-risk individual, or you live with someone, or have frequent contact with someone who is high risk? How do you protect yourself? Well, you know that the gold standard in masks is an N95. In the recent tests, while the surgical mask could stop 99% of outgoing particles, these suckers 99.9% outgoing, and if you fit them well and take lots of precautions, they know that a N95 or KN95 or KF94 mask can stop about 95 to 94% of incoming particles. These things are hard to get. The district has a limited supply. These are not comfortable to wear. To really get the full protection fit, you'd have to shave any facial hair off and so on. I find these too uncomfortable to be practical for many people in the school setting. So my advice for practical high-risk precautions is that you wear the surgical mask, which is 99% droplet stoppage outward, and you enhance it by simultaneously wearing a face shield. This combination is what I wore when I was checking out Chromebooks to hundreds of middle school parents and students over the last few weeks, was the surgical mask with the face shield. Did this for hours. It was okay. It was a lot more comfortable to me than an N95. And I think this is a good solution if you are a high-risk person or you have someone high risk in your household. Those were some highlights of our district's health protocols. I urge you to consult the live document that is our district's reopening plan. It will continue to evolve as we learn more about COVID-19 and the protections for it and how best to operate in this environment. Thank you for your attention and your cooperation this school year in helping make it as safe as possible for students and for staff.